It's been a tough couple of months. I could just make some joke about how I was conscripted into the Second Great Emu War or whatever, but honestly I can't be bothered to put out the effort, so I'm just going to talk about Moomins. I didn't know much about Moomins growing up. I knew of them, of course. It's hard to avoid them when you live in the UK. Hell, there's even a store dedicated to them in London. I did catch some reruns of the old 90s cartoon. Yeah, I didn't watch much after that. My sibling did though, they didn't give a shit. So I banished the memories of that to the deepest recesses of my mind, along with that one Wallace and Gromit movie they would not stop showing us in primary school, and that one fucked up show with the talking rocks.
We're coming, we're coming, we're coming, we're coming, we're coming.
Yes, that is a real thing. I'd almost completely forgotten about them, to be honest. I didn't even know the show was getting rebooted till images of this guy started turning up on my dash, and Dodi announced that she'd made a song that would appear in one of the episodes. So after hearing everybody and their cat telling me how relaxing this show was, I decided to check it out. And I'll be damned if they weren't right, to be honest. Moomin Valley is, well, I can only really describe it as soft. It's very soft. And in the current climate where every show has to be about some big world-ending narrative, having episodes centered around basic things like jealousy, the fear of change, and petty vandalism is bizarrely refreshing. Another great thing is it does away with long-form storytelling. Each episode can be watched in any order. It still is kind of serialized, but it never really amounts to anything other than tiny nods. Some will mention that the river is rising in one episode, and the next will show it flooding, but that's kind of it. The episodes are so strenuously linked together that I am convinced that they outright changed the order in some places, but the fact that's still up for debate kind of just proves my point. I can't say this for certain since I haven't read them, but if I had to guess, I'd chalk most of this up to the episodes being based on short stories and kids' books, meaning that everything had a set beginning, middle, and end, so they couldn't really smush in anything else, or at least they were smart enough to not try. My only real complaint with the writing is they sometimes try and squeeze in more than one moral into an episode, and they don't always manage to pull this off, which just leads to them getting their wires crossed a bit. The Golden Tail is probably the worst example of this. It starts off like it's gonna be a don't put pressure on your kids story, which is good. And then Moomin Troll actually gets the Golden Tail and it steers more towards it's like a don't let your ego get in the way situation, which, I mean, it's been done before, but whatever, I'll roll with it. Only for it to then veer off again to being about love the whole, not the part, which, I mean, sure, before it finally settles on a your achievements are what make you message. Don't get me wrong, none of these are bad, but it just makes the episode feel rushed and sloppy as a result. The episodes work much better when the writers limit themselves to a singular role, or maybe just two, which thankfully they do for the most part. And while I'm listing complaints, I'm not super sold on the animation. Don't get me wrong, it looks fine, but nothing seems to have the right amount of weight put behind it, if you know what I mean. Objects don't quite fall the way they should, people kind of move like they're made of styrofoam. It's not really that much of a big complaint because story tends to take precedent over animation for me. Hell, they could have animated it with stick figures and I'd still probably love it this much. It just is something that irked me while I was watching. Actually, while we're on the subject of voice actors, it's all really good for the most part, and if you grew up on British movies and TV, you'll probably recognize most of them. Most everyone fits their roles. I especially like the voice that they got for Moomin Mama. She's got this really nice soft tone that is great whenever she has to be sassy, which is like all the time.
Ah, yes, this is the life. No fuss, no home comforts, just simple, wild living.
Of course, dear. Would you prefer a soft, medium, or firm pillow tonight?
Soft. As usual.
The only one of the main cast I'm not super sold on is Taron Egerton, who voices Moomin Troll. Don't get me wrong, he does fine, and I've made my peace with the fact that we're just gonna have to deal with kids' characters sounding like adults from now on. But I don't know, maybe he was just a little too monotone for the part. Even with all these little niggles though, I find that I really can't muster up the energy to care. This show just puts me in such a happy little haze. It's like Prestige, but without the nightmarish withdrawal symptoms. It's like a weird dream that operates completely on its own logic. The odd phrases that I'm gonna assume are ripped straight from the books and lack of current slang or idioms make the whole thing feel timeless. It's also just really damn funny. Like, I watched this with my sibling and we actually laughed out loud during pretty much every episode.
The forest belongs to us all.
And I know I said before that some of the morals lose their punch because they have to share the spotlight, but when they chill out and pace themselves, they teach some really good lessons that I honestly wish I'd learned as a kid. Stuff like, don't bend over backwards to make one person happy if it's just going to make everyone else around you miserable. And one of the best damn metaphors for an introvert I have ever seen.
I had to get away for a while. I was starting to feel enclosed.
What does it matter?
It's not that I don't like people. I just feel caged in sometimes.
They even managed to cover abuse without cocking it up, which, based on the shit that I've had to deal with when it comes to other shows, deserves a fucking medal. Moomin Valley is probably the only recent kids show that I actually think young kids and their parents can both genuinely enjoy. I've already forced my niece to watch this show, and you bet I'll be doing the same thing when or if I have kids of my own. If you have children and don't just want to leave them with an iPad with YouTube Kids on it for hours, I can't recommend Moomin Valley enough. Hell, watch it even if you don't have kids. Oh, and feel free to come back when you do.